The ABCs of horror.
Welcome. Welcome to the HellBound horror show. I need to be very, very quiet. I shouldn't have been reading from the Necronomicon. I think I've unleashed something, and it's coming to get me. I think it's inside the house. Oh, I thought that was going to be a scary jump scare. I am so glad it's just you. How are you, hon? Ugh. A Quiet Place. I'm reviewing a recent horror film tonight. Check out the progress I'm making. And this isn't any old horror film. This is one of the most critically acclaimed horror films of recent memory. And for good reason. This movie is tense, it's emotional, and it's absolutely terrifying. There is a lot of praise to be had here. But first, let's take a step back and look at an overview of the story. And since this movie is still fairly recent, I'm not going to spoil too much, just mostly stuff you would get from watching the trailers. A Quiet Place focuses on the Abbott family in a post-apocalyptic world. Apparently the Costello family didn't make it.
We'll just... All right, I'll take it easy.
There are creatures introduced into the real world that hunt humans, and the way that they hunt the humans is through sound. If they hear you, they hunt you. And that's actually the tagline of the film. Perfect. It's an attention-grabbing premise, and it's executed phenomenally. The use and subtraction of sound is the biggest component of the film, and by far the most interesting and original aspect of it. The film does a fantastic job making the audience an active participant in the movie-going experience. The movie gets quiet on many occasions, and it makes you, the audience, feel the need to be quiet as well. I would have hated to be that person in a crowded movie theater slurping on a soda. People who would have hated me. It's a no-brainer that some of the movie is completely silent. After all, it is called A Quiet Place. But it's what the movie does in the silence that really captivates me. There's not a ton of dialogue to express emotion or to set an atmosphere. Instead, the soundtrack and score speaks for the characters. The soundtrack is incredibly expressive and expansive. Honestly, the sound design is the most important character in the whole movie. The movie is worth a watch in this regard alone. I went into this movie with a ton of question marks surrounding the film. Like, can the funny man from The Office make a legitimately scary horror film, especially when he admitted that he doesn't like horror films? And is this movie really as scary as people say? Also, could a mostly silent film even work in today's cinema? With these legitimate questions surrounding the film, I finally sat down and watched it. And the one thing I was surprised most with is the family aspect of the film. At the bottom of this movie lies the heart of two parents willing to do anything for the good of their family. This movie's focus is an emotional family drama first and foremost, and then builds in these concrete horror ideas on top. You are so invested in these characters that little things that bog down most horror films wouldn't even bother you. It's a heartwarming yet gut-wrenching film. I have been extremely positive about this film so far. However, there were some glaring problems that really affected me. The average moviegoer isn't even going to notice this or is going to care about this, but it distracted me. The whole time I was watching this film, I just felt as though something was off. I was emotionally attached to the film, but logically things weren't adding up. There are some minor spoilers ahead, so just be aware. The creatures are completely blind, and seemingly their only sense is hearing and possibly touch. They quickly and violently attack anything that makes a sound. They may be armored, and they also may not have a weakness. They have wiped out a large population of Earth in about a year. They are incredibly strong and can cut through metal like it's no one's business. In a blink of an eye, one creature cuts through this silo in a second. Yet, when it attacks a truck, it just makes some dents, and it can't seem to break in to get the kids. It's an emotional scene, but logically, it doesn't add up. These things that cannot see and may not be from this planet can easily walk up and down the stairs, no problem at all. Now let's talk about the family and the world. We know that the population of Earth is almost completely diminished from the barren landscape and the lack of any countries responding to or sending out radio transmissions. Yet, this family has a fully powered house and property. There is a scene with solar panels, but there's only a handful of those. They keep lights on at all times and even have a fridge plugged in. I feel like that's a lot of power to be using. Plus, a fridge makes a ton of noise. In the script, it originally called for 2 generators being buried under the ground so that they weren't making noise. But that's nowhere in the film, and I just don't buy it. The family is all about planning for an attack. They have lights surrounding the property. If things get bad, lights turn red. They also have cameras hooked up all around the property and a bunch of monitors inside to keep track of what's going on. So why not set up traps? Or even better yet, a plan B for an attack. Why not have a speaker system set up far away from the house to distract any creature that gets too close? It would give some time for the family to recuperate and to figure out what to do next. I mean, they have the time on their hand. The dad literally goes and picks up sand to lay on the ground to try to reduce the noise. And the sand trails just go on and on. There's a trail that literally goes all the way into town. He could have easily set up a distraction system to help save him and his family. Speaking of the sand, I feel like it's just a write-off. Humans are allowed to sprint at full pace on the sand, and it won't alert any of the creatures. I can literally see dried up leaves and twigs on the sand, but apparently that makes no noise? But no, the creatures won't hear your huffing and puffing or even the pitter-patter of your feet. Yet, a small raccoon silently squeaks and walks on the sand. Oh, but that's enough to set off the creatures. Don't even get me started on the nail in the step. Look at this picture. Can you tell me why in God's name is there a nail at this location on a step? It serves no purpose. There is no connection there. It's literally there to provoke emotion from us. the audience. A Quiet Place tries to be so straight in playing off the real world. There is no sense of fantasy. There is no sense of surrealism. It's black and white. And that's why I have a problem with these little nitpicks. They try to build this real world, yet there are just some things that are so logically off just for the sake of causing tension and dread in the audience. Even though there were parts that bothered me, this is a pretty great movie and totally worth a watch, especially if you can turn off that analytical part of your brain and just sit back and enjoy the emotional roller coaster.